Delight to be here. Delight to get to see what unfolds in our conversation today. Looking forward to how we might take this work to the next level of being available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet, our ultimate goal. I'm thinking with some new writing that I'm doing how we get this to more and more people, and realizing that people live by their stories. Been wondering how that might be able to facilitate and unify people, people who live in a different story, they're on a different side of an argument. One person's got one story, the other's got another. How do you unify them when their stories are different? But realizing that there's one story that's pretty much universal. And it happens to be the title of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? People ask themselves that question over and over and over. And realizing that might be a point from which to begin unifying people in the conversation about, rather than where most people's Why Is This Happening to Me Again story ends in blame, how to move people off of the blame into responsibility. Create a space where this conflict and strife that just governs the game for so many people can come to an end, and step into a space where the use of the tools to put the end to why is this happening to me again, rather than trying to force somebody else to change, might just be a key way into opening the space for healing. So I hope that you're on the healing path and that this work is assisting and supporting you in moving in that direction, in learning to remove all forms of hostility and fear from your life and step into the space where literally you get to function out of the presence of love as the presence of love, and get to play that game with everybody else that you interact with. So how would that impact your life if your story, when it happens, whatever it is, instead of being about how somebody else needs to change, if your story, if your explanation to yourself of whatever's going on in your life led you to a conversation with yourself about yourself, rather than where most people end up with a conversation about somebody else needing to change in order for their lives to change. How would that change your life? How would that change your story? And if you start questioning yourself as to why this is happening to me again, based upon recognizing your participation in what goes on in your world, the realization of the fact that the space where the change needs to take place is inside rather than on the outside. So does that fit? Does that make sense for everybody? And if so, rather than the story about your parents or your spouse or your children or your boss or your government or the world, you walk away from a conflict and your whole conversation is 100% to yourself about yourself. Because you'll notice if you've been through a particular conflicting situation, you know, as I like to say, 87 different times with 42 different people, you recognize you're the only one that was there every time, and that whatever it is that's going on is yours, and it's about you. And what are you ready to do about it? I thought the conversation that Dan brought up yesterday when he called in and spoke about looking at the historical conversation that comes out of his family system and being about victimhood, that there's a change that needs to happen inside in order for that game to be different. It was a powerful one, so thank you for that, Dan. And if you're with us today, what's on your mind? What's got your imagination captive in terms of where your life needs to go in order to unfold exactly the way you want it to unfold? I was listening this morning to some conversations about different religions, you know, putting my ear to the earth on different stories, and how so many times even the religious stories are about how it's somebody else's fault. And recognizing that a conversation about responsibility is one of those profound conversations you can have. Living in this state of denial, thinking or speaking as though something outside of us is the cause of something that's going on inside of us, leads us to having to hide something from ourselves in order to move forward. Whereas a conversation about oneself means that things get uncovered. The root of the "why is this happening to me again" experience comes to light when one is looking within rather than looking without. In our workshop on communication, did you hear what I think I said? We offered the definition of the word as a tool of communication. And many people talk, and have no interest in communication at all. All they want to do is tell their story. Whereas communication, in the definition of this work, is to recognize that I have a reality in my mind that I want to transfer intact to your mind. And that when I use words for that purpose, I'm actually communicating. Where many people are just telling their story. I can remember times when I've said to someone, well, you know, I've heard your story quite a few times, and what I'm inviting you to do is to look inside at what's going on, and people go into a fit of rage over what, you don't want to listen to my story? It's like, not really. I've heard so many stories before, but what about the work that needs to be done to clean up our stories? So what does that resonate for you? If you're out there in listener land, our call-in number, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you're listening directly to the show, and if you push 1, that raises hand, and we'll be having a conversation. How can we support you in your healing process? What's on your mind today?
We have 2 hands up. The first one, though, is Susan, and she was talking to Dr. Tim at the end of his show, so it may just be that her hand is still up.
I didn't know you were still connected. We had a team, and Tom is with our team.
Okay, I guess she's talking to somebody else.
That's it. You got your answer.
We'll go to the second one, and it's Belinda, 541. You're on the air.
Hello, good morning.
Welcome. Good morning. Welcome, young lady. How can we support you today? What's on your mind?
Well, what you were just asking for was feedback, and I'm either growing a lot of brain cells, sort of like got a popcorn popper going in there, or these have been exceptionally good broadcasts. So many of the last month's broadcasts is that you and Dr. Tim have actually, whether you know it or not, supported each other by the content of your own shows, helping others. Yeah, and it's just like sweet for me. And I'm sitting on my hands and taping my mouth because my want is to go tell everybody the good news, right? And you have reminded us quite frequently about John the Baptist. So
losing your head. Got to be careful.
I know. And so I'm waiting for discernment about that. But I see my family members especially struggling, and actually my community, which is my larger family. I feel very, very bonded to this community, which is a delightful feeling to have. And
right.
And I'm beginning to see that in one of committees I'm working on our Pine Valley 2050, which is several of the community members got together and said, hey, we as a community, as a whole community, need to sit down and envision how we want our community to be in 2050 because change is going to happen, period.
Right.
And so I see, and I got on a Dark Skies International committee, actually. We're trying to make this a Dark Skies Reserve.
Awesome.
I know. With our little...
The same thinking has been going on for me. We actually had and unfortunately I missed it. There was a call to the community. I didn't see it till several days after it closed on, what do you want to see in the next years coming here in Bristol? And that was exactly one of the things that I wanted to put out. In fact, we've been thinking about how we can get a couple of street lights that are shining over our native species garden turned off so that these critters can recoup, in an environment they've for thousands of years have been living in.
Well,
and so I'm with you on that Dark Skies idea.
The Dark Skies International, they have sponsored in the past for communities that are Dark Skies communities, the street lights that shine the light only on the spot where it's supposed to illuminate.
Right. And downward instead of up.
Yeah. And so instead of turning the light off, it allows safety to continue to be for the community, but at the same time it honors the wildlife and our health situation, our health problems and everything else. So it is doable. Both, it doesn't have to be an either-or situation, which is exciting for us. But I just wanted to mention that this lady on this committee, when I said, I'm not an organizer, I'm not interested in organizing, I don't really like to go to meetings, I don't know how I can be of help here, but I want to be of help. And she says, oh, honey, you're just a convener. You just sit there. And I said, okay, I've got my pom-poms. I'll just be an encourager and try to be a bridge. And so I'm beginning to think that is my secondary purpose in life. I'm a convener, and that's kind of exciting. So anyway, I just wanted to share with you how I am appreciating both shows. I get on whenever I can, and I listen to the what I miss as often as I can. And I just wanted to take my pom-poms out and go rah, rah, rah.
So tell me about your vision of yourself as a convener.
Well, I think I mentioned to you once before in a conversation that COVID was really a learning experience for me to help me get out of my head and into my heart and get out of even sharing. It didn't even have to be that I was preaching. I could be sharing, but other people could perceive me preaching and feel threatened, especially if they hold very strong viewpoints one way or another. And I don't. I just say, no mandates, please. Let's live and let live and do our very best to take care of our health and on all levels. And when I realized that even I couldn't even share that very well in the height of the COVID panic, I went to the heart. And I said, if I don't see love when I look out there, that must mean there's forgiveness work I have inside of myself. So I think what I'll do is I will start verbally expressing my acceptance of others. And the way I hit upon it, Michael and Jeannie, is I just said, hey, I'm 79 years old. I have a license to call you sweetie or honey. And so I just started calling people sweetie, honey, dear heart, dear one, whatever popped out of my mouth. And I got some really strange looks, especially from the men, right? But anyway, I see it softening people up, and I see it softening me up. Okay. And so now what I do, that's my main approach, is to see Christ in others and do my best to shut my mouth and not tell them how to do this, because I have no clue myself. I'm just practicing what I think is going to work. So anyway, I just share that with you. Yeah. It's not so much in what I do, it's who I am. That's how I see my secondary purpose. It really segues into my primary purpose. Yeah. The doing is secondary. Yeah. So I thought I'd help you because I'm still practicing, and I've got a lot of practice in a lot of arenas, especially because I've got Velcro on my butt, and I like to sit too much and intellectualize too much. And so between you and Jeannie and Dr. Tim and all of the people who call in, especially Dan yesterday, that really touched me, because I have a real soft heart towards the Jewish culture. I'm just sure I have a Jew in the woodpile somewhere. I would be delighted to find that out. So anyway, I've got my pom-poms out. You go, ladies and gentlemen. Dear ones, go. You're doing wonderfully. And it's so sweet to be on a path that is so supportive of all sides of the situation. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll hold space for your listening ear to facilitate and bring forward the presence of human life wherever you land, and we'll join you in doing that.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you all are interested in knowing what we're doing in the dark skies and how we're struggling and trying to come together and focus and encourage, we got a little Dark Skies Northeast Oregon Stars, and I could give you the chair's email address, and you could just ask to be put on as a floating member, and then you'll at least get our news. You don't have to do anything, join anything, or anything else. Just and then that puts your name on their list just as a member, an outlying member, and then that just gives more credence to Dark Skies International as we work towards the requirements to become a Dark Sky International organization. Yeah.
Right.
And
Cool. Yeah, I'd appreciate if you do that.
Some ideas. Yeah. And if there was a number when you missed that opportunity in your community, maybe you could just contact the person and see how you can get on board after the fact. That might be a possibility. Right. Okay. Well,
yes.
I've chattered away enough. Thank you so much. Bless
All right. You have a blessed one. Appreciation. Yeah, there's some interesting videos on YouTube, if you haven't watched them, where they're talking about the long-term impact of light pollution, how as cities grow and point their lights toward the sky, more and more insects suffer, right down to some of the smallest of creatures that no longer have the ability to navigate by the stars, which they've proven that some creatures do, because the stars aren't visible anymore. And it's an interesting topic, and we see it here where we've been developing this native species garden and realizing that there are many species that we want to attract to our garden, and because the city happens to have a light right outside of the garden space, and these creatures don't get to ever see a night sky, which, you know, how many thousands of years have the critters who were here long before we were had a night sky to live under, had a darkened sky, had a night sky without pollution. Just another one of those things to think about, what we do as human beings to our earth as we expand out, sometimes without consideration to those we share the earth with. Just an interesting topic if you care to look into it. And Michini, were you able to get back on, sweetie?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me okay, though? The reason I had to get off is it was like you all were bubbly.
Oh, really? Okay, no, you're loud and clear, sweetie.
Okay, good. I found an article. I'm actually going to put a link in the notes for today, and it says artificial light at night may be contributing to an ecological Armageddon. And it talks about the drastic decline of insects were reported in Germany. The research was done on a biomass of flying insects that they decreased more than 75% over a 27-year period. And it talks about, you know, that they need the night sky for navigation.
Right.
So I'm putting a link to that article in the notes for today, too.
Cool. Awesome.
So somebody press one. We have 34 minutes.
Yeah, if you're out there in listener land, how can we support you? What's on your mind? How is this work impacting you? Is there a way we can support you in carrying forward your understanding of the process of forgiveness and all the corollary tools that go along with it? You know, if you're not using the forgiveness process, we invite you to go to our website, whyagain.org, and in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a link that says Start Here. If you click that link, that will open a space where you'll be able to walk through, you know, everything that we've developed over the years around this idea of forgiveness and all of the tools that go hand in hand with this process, and the technology that comes out of the first century Aramaic language, was realizing, had a conversation with Michael Tatey this morning, and we were talking about the Aramaic and how it's the only language on the planet, at least the only one I know of, that is based in the physics of the world rather than based in men's minds. You look at that particular conversation that we're told Yeshua has with Peter after he comes out of the Garden of Gethsemane, and he directly addresses Peter as Satan. Seems like a rather strange thing to do. And then you realize his definition for Satan, and it's got nothing to do with listening to another video, just, doing research on different topics, but listening to a whole theological discourse based on there's this evil creature that's out there to get us, and he's getting us, and he's getting us, and he's getting us in this arena, and that arena, and that arena, and that. I mean, just ad nauseum, as though Satan were something outside of us, and how people ignore the very words of the man they proclaim to follow, who in that particular conversation with Peter calls Peter Satan. And then he tells us what the word means. Stuck in your own carbon-based memories is for you think in the mind of man rather than the plan of the Creator. When we're stuck in the perceptual systems of our memory bank, then we're locked in a space that we're not designed to live in as human beings. And the genius of this man Yeshua to give us a tool to collapse that mind, to literally be out of our minds, if our mind is doing nothing but replicating realities from the past, and be restored to the real mind that we're designed to live in, which is not carbon-based memory. That we're designed not to be informed by our past, although information from the past can be useful, but if we're stuck in that past, then our creative process is limited to what has gone on in the past, limited to the advice of the past, rather than the advice of a neutral, present love that can lead us out of the past, out of the cycles of why is this happening to me again? You'll oftentimes hear me say, and I say it kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I really mean it, is in order to heal, we've got to be out of our minds. The trauma that we experience, aside from, of course, somebody punching you in the nose, the trauma that we tend to live in, or that humans tend to often live in, is simply the repeating traumas of their own perceptual systems. Knowing how to collapse your perceptual system and doing the work of collapsing it is the actual definition of forgiveness. The genius of this mind that showed us that perception is driven by goals, and that the eradication of a particular goal for the moment, not meaning you can never go toward that end again, but recognizing that if I load a goal in my mind and my mind serves up a construct based in some form, of hostility or fear, that my pathway out of that is to collapse that output from my mind, introduce the active presence of love to the hidden part of my own mind so that my own healing can occur. So I can heal those things of degeneration. So when they talk about look to the lives of the fathers for ours, but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. Most people are living in the shadow of the unresolved pain and trauma of their generations, never realizing that it's happening inside of them and repeated because who has the tools with which to collapse those, collapse into the source of the calamities of one's own mind, the underlying dynamic. And in so doing, rid oneself of that dynamic. It's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome that somebody had that understanding. You can access the tool of forgiveness, not just on the website, but we have the world's only forgiveness app if you go to your app store. I was actually talking to a gentleman who's been doing this work. Well, you've heard him speak on the show several times over the years. Patrick McGann, fellow naturopath, somebody I've known for better than a half century. And he was saying that he had just embarked on a project of doing some worksheets on the app in the Dragon Klingon game, rather than the adult form of the worksheet, that he was working with the Dragon Klingon game. You know, that's another aspect of the forgiveness app, bringing forgiveness to children through a game. And he was finding it was interesting, and he was getting some insight in terms of his own process by using that tool. There are actually 3 different tools in the app, and the way you access the app is just go to your app store and do a search. And the search term, Heartland, Heartland, one word, Heartland, Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness. When you do that, there may be a few things come up in your search bar. One of them will have a red glowing heart. That's the app. Download it. You can do a simplified form of the forgiveness worksheet process. You can do the full form, or you can play the Dragon Klingon game. It's a way to introduce forgiveness to children.
You have a hand up.
Great. Let's say hello.
It's area code 904. I think it's Dusty.
Yes, it is. Aloha, everybody.
Aloha. Welcome, good sir.
Yes, I'm glad to be here. I have a question about the Khabarovsk.
Right. The Khabarovsk manuscript.
Right, and now most, and it's not all of the Aramaic words and worldview concepts, whatever, comes pretty much from the Khabarovsk Codex, or that.
What we've been working with, yes, that's the manuscript that's at the root of this work, is what comes out of the Khabarovsk.
I wonder if you could tell us, folks, just a bit of that history, so we know the more of the source of this.
Well, back in the 70s, a fellow who was a partner of mine, who would eventually become a partner of mine, he wasn't back in the 70s, but they were working on, he was actually a real estate attorney in Atlanta, and he was actually engaged in a lawsuit against the government. And I don't know all of the details of it, but one of the the things that caught his attention was how some of the people involved in that lawsuit were, it seemed, not the least bit interested in truth, but were pursuing a goal other than the truth, simply winning the lawsuit they were engaged in.
Yeah,
and that set him on a search.
Yeah.
And ultimately, he ended up hearing from British intelligence. He became interested in, being an attorney. He became interested in the prison system in America, and through some communications that came to him through British intelligence, he, how can I put this? He became informed by them, came to understand that if he could bring a shift within that system, within the people in that system, that it would be something that could be spread throughout the world. And he ended up working with the Aramaic language. And he had a translator who owned a family manuscript, a fellow named Malik, and it was about a 7th century manuscript that was not complete. And so he put together an expedition to the Middle East and went searching for an earlier and more complete manuscript. And they ended up on the Khyber River in Turkey, which is the way that the manuscript got its name. It came from, the name of it being the Khaburis. It was a monastery on the Khyber River in Turkey. And through some negotiations that took place, they ended up leaving Turkey with this manuscript, and it became the foundation of the work of Dan McDougald. It was several years down the road that I met Dan, and the manuscript is proclaims the imprimatur, which would be kind of like the certification that an official stamp would be put on it. The imprimatur said that it was a copy of a 2nd century text. Took it back to approximately 164 AD. So it ends up becoming the oldest complete copy known of the Aramaic New Testament.
Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't know you came about it that way. That's amazing.
And back in the 70s, there's been no actual translation work done since the project kind of ran out of money in the 70s, but in its origins, there were 25 of the world's top Aramicists who were working with Dan. He, being an attorney, used the rules of evidence to determine what, when he would send passages out to these 25 different translators, they'd come back and he'd correlate them. And he used the rules of evidence that he'd learned for the courtroom for determining what got into the translation and what didn't. And he became the person who balanced what went in, what went out. He had several native Aramaic speakers that he worked with as advisors, and that became the root of it, and out of that came the discovery of what 1st century Aramaic forgiveness was, that it wasn't about letting somebody else off the hook for what was going on inside of them, that it was about collapsing the perceptual mind so that there was room for truth to show up rather than the biases of the perceiving mind.
So this is so the Khabaris manuscript then is a rather impeccably researched in terms of the phonetics and the worldview that it presents.
Well, I would imagine that some people might have different standards as to what they would consider impeccable. So I'm not sure that everyone would consider it that, but for me, the functionality of it put it in that category for me, and that's why I've dedicated the last 40 plus years of working with it, and in particular bringing forward the forgiveness process to the world.
Well, I'm quite grateful for all the people in that line and the motivations that brought that forward, because I think it's very timely, if not, past timely, and good info.
I'm with you in that.
Yeah. And so one reason I bring this up, I haven't even had a chance to look through it, but in the process of realizing that I had your address probably in about 37 different places, still couldn't find it, I went to the Avison box and was rummaging around, making sure I had an address. But people's addresses change, and I never know. And I found a copy that some son of a gun had put in the bottom of the box. And I would like to.
And you didn't realize it was there?
I did not know it was there.
Oh my goodness! You just found. Oh wow!
Yeah, so it's a real.
Well, I'm glad you found it after these years.
Yeah, no kidding.
What's it been about?
Slow.
2 years?
I'm a late bloomer, I get it, and but I thanks for putting that in there. What a treat! That was like Christmas.
Well, really, and I don't remember whether I put a note in there to this effect, because whenever I hand the manuscript, or somebody gets a copy of the manuscript, one of the things I suggest that they do is ignore the translation of the Beatitudes from Matthew 5, and just take the key words, the way the passages are laid out, just take the key words and translate it, go back into the back of the book where you've got that first century dictionary, and translate that, like really get into it and get a sense of it out of those words, your own, translating of it. And everybody that does that finds it to be a very powerful process.
Oh, okay.
I know it was the second time that I went through it, and I'd always been taught, as with a lot of things, that it's just it's a nice philosophy. Look at this. And I remember it was the second time, and this goes back 30-some years ago. It was the second time I went through it, doing that longhand, that I realized this isn't just about a nice philosophy. This is a set of instructions. This is about how to achieve a result. And that just transformed the Beatitudes for me, like, monumentally. And I realized the same when dealing with what people call the Lord's Prayer, that most people sit around and by rote repeat, which is one of the things Yeshua said, don't do that, it's crazy. That they're both sets of instructions. It's about how to achieve a particular result. And that just transforms it all for me.
Yeah, I like that. And, I kind of do that with just about every works, regardless of what part of time and space it comes from. Just try to extract, okay, this leaps out. But what you said about going back around the second time, it's funny. I did that with the, of all things, the Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi. And I read that in '69, and, I was really quite buoyed and moved, and it helped. It just helped. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing, and and engaging as a story. And so about 15 years ago, I decided, well, I'm going to reread that and see if it's one of those things, that you read that's dated and like an old movie kind of thing, and it's campy or something. And I went back and read it, and I went, oh my gosh. And this major oh my gosh, which was a capital gosh, was when he had an asterisk, and I would go down below, and the first reading, I didn't so much as look at all that as instructions.
Right.
But the second time I went through, I realized that's where the shiniest gems were, where he would explain exact processes and things. And I guess that's what I'm hearing you say.
That would be my offering, yes.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said for that, and because I have a tendency to scan things quick and try to, because there's so much data and info available, although not much on the Aramaic, but some. And but then I realized I need to go back sometimes and then go, okay, I'm going to do a little longer version of that. And there's almost always gems and anything written that was written for, shall we say, truth and heart stuff. And this manuscript, I'm looking forward to just kind of diving into parts of it. I'm just pleased, and I thank you for this.
Delighted. Well, I'm glad you found it.
Yeah. So, your program has everything but a jingle. A little boom, boom, a little song at the beginning of your program. Anyways, it did occur to me in some sideways moment of inner levity.
Well, maybe you should write us a jingle.
Maybe I should. I already did incorporate Ruka de Kucha into this one song I already had, but it was a song I already had. Although, it's a good topic. So I may do just that.
Cool.
And So I've got it sitting here, and it's a little bent. Because it's been sitting in that box all this time, with things on it, and so that's part of my Christmas treat, as it were, going through that.
Nice. Well, it'll be fun to hear your discoveries as you go through it, how it impacts you, what it says to you. And so it'd be cool for you to just, anytime that something's clicking for you, to come and share it with our audience. I've actually thought about, Dr. Timson when going through the Way of Mastery, and I've thought about maybe going through the Khabura's manuscript that way. So.
Okay, well, I'll think of that in the back of my mind as I go through it, and of course some things will leap out for me that may not leap out for everybody else, but I'll do just that, by golly, and so I want to wish, I realize I want to be the first one on the block to wish everybody a happy holiday season, whether it's Christmas for you, it is for me, and or whatever it is. If nothing else, it's the solstice. So,
Kwanzaa, New Year.
Kwanzaa. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing, all those, and how the solstice got kind of co-opted, and it's not co-opted, but used, and I'm assuming Christmas was referring to, at least in part, the solstice. So that to me is the beginning of Christmas. I think that's about 3 or 4 days before, something like that. So,
one of the, we have this verbiage in our culture that talks about holidays, and when we recognize that word holiday is a shortened version of what these things were set aside for, were holy days, that they were days they were times where communities celebrated wholeness and the discovery of wholeness and the expression of wholeness, not necessarily the the co-opted word holy being, down on your knees with your hands folded, but rather that they were a time to come apart from the society for a while and step into deeper levels of our wholeness. So I certainly hold that space for everybody as we enter this season, that at least a part of each person's energy is dedicated toward that stepping into wholeness the way we're designed to live as human beings.
Yes, I that's beautifully put. And it just kind of brought up a memory that, and I liked it. There was a couple, and they were the only Afro-American descent people in this beach that I've ever known that lived here. And there's a young couple, and they were very hip, and they, anyways, I knew them, and they would say every day, "Merry Christmas." Of the year, they would say that as a way of, saying, okay, be whole, be reborn, all that can be within that construct. And of course, it is every day. In fact, it's every freaking moment. So, so I wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a wholeness, 364 plus, whatever it is.
Accepted.
Yeah. And one last thing for me, because I know we're running close here, is that especially more and more recently, I live alone in this place right now, and it's easy to get into a mind wander that means nothing. In fact, usually it's on something stupid, you know what I mean? And so I come to realize, and I guess this is for all of us, but I come to realize that, every moment, we only have so many moments in this body time, in this life, and to waste it on something that means less than zero, I'm getting so I am kind of fed up with myself on those moments. I don't beat myself up for it too much, but that it all counts. That every moment is a precious moment, and it's always a new moment. So whatever has happened or will happen, or you think it's going to happen, whatever, it's now. And my intention is to draw near to the source and to the truth, and that's certainly in my heart, your heart, everybody's heart, really. But I'm trying to use this time. I would hope to say that I'm being somewhat effective. I use this time to not get lost in the culture or other people's mishigash or my own mishigash, but more towards the divine, whatever you want to call that.
Well, joining you in doing that, my friend, I'm with you 100%. I think it was Mother Teresa that said, not everyone gets the opportunity to do great things, but we can do the little things that we do with great love and bringing human life into the experience. And you're likely familiar with your breadth of knowledge, familiar with the book Chop Wood and Carry Water. And, the question being, what do you do before enlightenment? You chop wood and you carry water. What do you do after enlightenment? You chop wood and you carry water. Life still has to be lived, but are we living it in a non-being state, or are we living as the human beings that we're designed to live as?
Yeah, and it's amazing to me that I can find myself just out in some kind of like this nebulosity, and then I go, whoop, and I remember kind of who I am or what is, and also I can come back into that more of a centered light. And by the way, I talked to Mother Teresa one time,
Really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah. It was, I guess, around the millennial laughter, so whatever it was. She set aside a time, like a Thursday between 1 and 3 or something, that she would field in-person phone calls. Well, shoot, nobody knew about it, but I just happened to know this renegade Catholic ex-monk or minister, priest, who did know. And he gave me the phone number, and my girlfriend was just an absolute, she adored everything, Mother Teresa. So I called up the number, and sure enough, it was Mother Teresa, and we had a few words, and then I handed the phone over to my girlfriend. I think it was like a Christmas thing or something. So, and it sounded just like her, just like you know, and all those film clips or whatever. And
right.
So that was kind of fun.
And what did she have to offer you?
Well,
what was your conversation?
I engaged her. What I engaged her in was mostly getting things set up for for Deja, who had been my long time girlfriend, and so I mostly just, you know, it's hello, hi, thank you very much, and Deja was teaching. She was extremely good, a yoga teacher, and she taught more than just posture. High-profile women who were like under a lot of stress and were trying to do a lot of good in the world would come to her one-on-one. She would only do one-on-one after a point, and so I listened in while Deja asked her how to best go about the work, and Mother Teresa said something to the effect of, teach them how to pray and pray with them, was the essence of what she imparted.
Sweet.
At least to date, it was sweet. So, and so anyways, I guess I'm going to shag out of here, and thank you so much for having the program, you and Jeannie and all.
All right, my friend, joining you in being the presence of love in the world and anchoring that presence everywhere we go. Have a blessed day. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, blessings. Bye-bye, everybody.